Hey guys, thank you for joining me for Indie View. My name is Chad Nuss. I'll be your host today. I'm the independent comic book creator, writer, and artist of the science fiction series called The Silence. And as an independent creator, I am very excited about indie comics, wanted to promote them, so I created this show as a way to give access and exposure to comic books from independent creators. I'm doing this once a month. I show about 20 books from that month, all independent based, to give lots of creators exposure to you, whether you love comics, whether you are normally someone that just reads Marvel or DC, or if you don't know anything about comics at all. I wanted to give you kind of a wide range introduction to the world of indie comics. First, I just want to thank my friends Brian and Jeremy from the Dastardly Dingoes channel, as they've invited me on to be part of their show and part of their network. And so definitely check them out. I'll be on their podcast as well. And we also have another show in the works called The Drawing Show, which will be coming up here in a few weeks. Let me talk a little bit about the show and then we'll get to the reviews. The indie comics I typically are going to review are from companies like Vault or Scout or AWA or Behemoth, those kind of books. Sometimes I'll have an Image book, a book from Boom Studios or Dark Horse, but usually not as frequently. I would say Image is still kind of in that independent range, even though they're a very big company. But they do have creators doing their own projects, which I would still consider independent. So you're still going to get some of that from some reviews from Image and Boom and Dark Horse and so forth. So let me talk about my grading system very briefly. I do it on a kind of a 5-point scale from A to D. And so A+, if I give it an A+ grading, that means the book is graphic novel worthy. Not only do I recommend or I'm going to buy it monthly, but when that hardback collected volume comes out, I'm definitely getting it so I can put it on my bookshelf because it's a beautiful book. Just a flat A, it means I highly recommend it. I would tell you to follow the series, buy it on a monthly basis, and support that comic book. If I give it a B, that means it was good. It wasn't one of my favorite, but it's a pretty solid book. I would recommend that you buy it, try it out for yourself, and see what you think. If I give it a C, I basically don't recommend it. I was not a big fan of it. I didn't think it was really worth reading it. And D is basically that book should not have been published. I rarely will give a book a D rating, but every once in a while you'll get one of those. So, and how I come up with the grade is I look at 3 categories: world building, art, and storytelling. So world building is basically the bigger context of the story. Are they giving you information about the universe that this story and these characters take place in? Art is self-explanatory, how the drawings are made. Does the art fit the story? Because sometimes you run into a mismatch there. Everything from the pencils to the inks to the color, the lettering, the composition of the page, the storytelling, the flow of the sequential art. I'm looking at all those elements. And then storytelling is a bit different than world building. Storytelling is the actual story itself. Can you follow it? Do the characters, are they realistic? Do you connect with the characters? Is there a clear plot? Is there a clear problem to be solved? Just the basic elements of a story. Is it well written and put together? So I give a grade on each one of those 3, and then based on those grades, I'll give it a final grade and a final recommendation. Let me just give a quick caveat. These indie comics are from all different genres. I was just focusing on sci-fi before, but now I want to look at all different kinds of independent books. Some of these books do have lots of cursing, lots of violence, some sexual scenes. So I just want to give that up front. Not all these are for everyone, and I'll try to mention that beforehand. So anyways, having said all that, let's get into the reviews. Number 1 is Miskatonic #1, and this is from Aftershock Comics. And so with this book, as you can see here, I'll just give you maybe a preview of, here's some art. You can see in there, that's kind of what the inside looks like. My overall grade for this book is a C. So this is one of those that I wouldn't really recommend. I mean, I might give it a C+, B- if you want to check it out for yourself. But let me tell you why. The world building in this book is good. I do give that an A because what you do see is it gives some background on the main character. And then the other thing I love when comics do this is when they include an appendix or they have advertisements that fit into that world, and they do that at the very end. This is a letter that corresponds with the story. So I love that kind of stuff because it brings in kind of an outside source of what's going on within the story. The art, I would give a clean B+, maybe an A-. I mean, it's good. There's nothing that when I look through it really blew me away, but it's all clean and very well done. So it's a solid B, A-, good art. But the problem with this story is the storytelling. And I'll tell you why. I gave that a C, which brought the whole book down. And this originally was not my last place book, but it starts out great. There's an explosion, someone, assassination, homicide, basically someone dies. This detective is brought on the scene. Police department or the FBI department basically fires everyone except for her, and she's able to, like, I want to say negotiate or swindle her way into keeping her job. So they put her on this case to find out who murdered this character that's introduced in the first couple pages. And she meets up with another guy, and they're both another detective, a male detective. And then it kind of goes downhill from there. Some of the storytelling gets a bit confusing. There's either a dream sequence or something happens. You can't really tell. It's very confusing with the male character. And then all of a sudden you're introduced to these kind of alien type creatures. And the conclusion of the story is they find this alien orgy. Like the characters going to search for these aliens all of a sudden that have really nothing to do. I don't understand why they're in the story, but that's the whole point. Like, that's what they find. And I'm thinking to myself, that's what you got? That's what you're coming with on this story? Is alien orgy? So, going with the C on this one. I do not recommend it. Not a good book. Number 19. This would be Machine Girl and the Space Invaders #1 from Stonebot Comics. And this one I give it a C as well. The worldview or world building on this, I'd say it's about a B. I mean, you know what's going on in the story. It's science fiction, kind of one of those intergalactic stories involving aliens and this main character, the Machine Girl. She's in this arena fighting these animals, and there's this like Jabba the Hutt type creature that's watching over her. And in the background, you find out her team is actually there to rob this kind of landlord type Jabba the Hutt figure, and they pull it off, and everything's fine. You kind of see the bigger picture of the story. It's fine. The art I give a C because some of the panels and some of the faces are a bit off. There's a couple panels where she doesn't look like this anymore, like her face changes just because it's not like super consistent between the panels. Sometimes she looks really beautiful, and then other times her face is like distorted and it shouldn't be. So there's a lot of that. And then the story, I'd just give a B, and it's just a kind of a boring story, to be honest with you. And the reason why I give it a C is because it's a simple story that's overdone. I mean, it's basically a hot girl strategy. You use a hot girl, you put her in an action scene with a bit of bad drawing and a very simple story where she's fighting a character, she beats the bad guy, and in the end, they steal and they run away. You've heard the story 100 times. It's not really one that's compelling or one that I would recommend going back to. So, Machine Girl and Space Invaders #1, I give a C. Number 18, Man's World, #1, and this is from AWA Upshot, and I also give this book a C. The world building on here, it's okay. It's a B. You kind of see what's going on here. They're visiting this planet. You learn very early in the story that they're there to kind of do some, looks like some hunting of these. It's kind of like a resort area, I guess they're going to. The art, I give a B. It's good. In some places, it's a bit overcolored. And this is the one thing you have to watch. Like, if the pencils, for example, are not that great, there's nothing you can do with the ink or the color to fix that. Like, the pencils are the foundation. The pencils aren't good. The rest of the thing is not going to be good. And I feel like with this, what they're trying to do is fix some of it with coloring. And you can't do that. So I felt like the coloring was a bit overdone. A little bit off, so that's why I gave the art a B. I mean, overall, it's good. I mean, there's nothing like anatomically incorrect, and the perspective is good, and all the basics are there. Just was not my favorite thing. So The problem for me is the story, once again, was a C. It was boring and predictable. The characters were a bit flat and predictable once again. This main character, Duncan, I mean, you've seen his character 100 times. They go onto an alien planet. He's basically like, doesn't care. He's like a bull in a china shop. I'm just going to do whatever I want. I'm the tough guy. And that's what gets them in trouble. You've seen that before. They go out and they go off the resort, even though they're not supposed to, because this Duncan guy, who cares? I'm just going to go do it. They meet up with another character. They get in a fight. And then at the end, of course, they're going out into this jungle to go hunting. And as predicted, you know they're going to get shot down and be in this very dangerous situation, which is exactly what happens. So very predictable. Characters are pretty flat. Art is okay, so I would give it a C. Not my favorite book. All right, number 17, Essentia, number 1. Now, this book grew on me a bit. I had originally given it a C, and it was actually one of my last place books. But the more I thought about it, I actually give it a B-. And the reason for, and as I said before, B- is like basically just go check it out yourself. You may love it. You may hate it. It's from Wake Entertainment. The world building here, I would give a C. There's not a whole lot of background. You're not really sure of, the bigger picture or the bigger story. There's some characters that are introduced. You're not really sure why they're there or who they are. The art, I would give a B. It's okay. It's a bit, once again, that the pencils are very simple. Not a whole lot of detail, especially when you look in the backgrounds and the cityscapes. It almost appears on some of the pages, the art is really good, but in other pages, some of the details are just missing. It almost looks like they had a deadline that they had to hit, and they fill it in with color. So, not a huge fan of the art. The story I would give a C, and the reason why is because it opens up with a murder scene, but you're not really connected to the characters. You don't really care so much, so it's not one of those things that you're drawn into. There's not a bigger context. You just say, oh, they found a dead body. Okay, I've heard that, read that, seen that in 1,000 stories. Why do I care? And that's what I kind of came away with. Like, what does it matter? I don't know who this character is. I don't know why it's significant that they found this other character. You're just not really tied into the story. There's a mystery character at the end, which I will say is kind of cool. You don't really see his identity. You just see these like big white circles for his eyes. He's often in shadow, so you don't really know who he is, which can really set up for an interesting story later on, and it might turn that way. But for me, I just wasn't 100% bought in. So that's one of those things, one of those stories I would tell you to go check out yourself. Number 16, this is The Picture of Everything Else, number 1. By Vault Comics, and I give this one a B-. The world building in here, B- as well. You know what's going on. It's based on this artist, and you kind of get a sense of the world that they're in. So it's good. You're not lost when you enter into this world. The art, I would give a C, and this is one of those cases where I would say like the cover's awesome. That's a beautiful cover, but when you get into it, some of the art is a bit, I'm going to say like cartoony, and I'm not a huge fan of watercolor, and that's kind of the style that it's in. That's just my personal preference. I've really not seen watercolor done really well in comics. There's a few rare examples. I would say David Mack, for example. If you want to see really good watercolors, go check out his stuff. But anyhow, that's kind of a picture of the art. The problem with the art on this is this story, I would give it B+ because it has such good potential, but the art really takes away from the story. This is supposed to be one of those like creepy murder, like this has such potential. I really wanted to love this book because basically what's happening is this artist that you can see here paints pictures of people, and then when he destroys those paintings, that person that he painted dies in real life. Amazing idea. The problem is they were trying to make it creepy and dark, but it's difficult to do that when your characters are cartoony. And that's what's happening here. The watercolors and the cartoon really take away from the story, which is why I give it a B-. I really wanted to give this an A. I really wanted to love it. It's a really cool idea, but it's got average execution. So I would tell you to check it out yourself. Give it a B-. You might love it. It was not my preference, even though I love the idea of the story. Number 15, Hotline Miami, Wildlife number 4 from Behemoth Comics. And I give this one a B-. I was originally attracted to it because of this amazing cover. The world building on the inside, you know what's going on. You're introduced to the characters. You get a real sense of who they are, as you can see the violence there, and that's those characters there. This is your basic like shoot 'em up kind of comic book, right? So it's a world you can understand. There's not a whole lot of like extra stuff that they put in to give greater context, which is why we give it a B. It's not one of those worlds that you're lost in, but it's not exactly one that you want to dive deeper in. So it's just kind of average. The art, I would give a B, kind of average. The story, I would give a C. And the reason why is because it's just kind of a simple, superficial story of shooting, blood, and guts. It's really missing that wow factor. It's just kind of one of your overdone action stories. You've seen that movie 100 times, where the characters are just go in and shoot up the place. It does have a good ending where there's a child or a teenager that confronts the guy here in the rabbit's ears, and really he kind of comes away with like he's asking him to help him, like mentor him, I guess. So could be interesting to see their relationship. But overall, I walked away not really super excited about this book. I give it a B-. Go check it out yourself. You may actually love it. I wasn't like super excited about it, even though the cover and some of the art is pretty good. Number 14, Giga. It's from Vault Comics. I love that cover. That cover is incredible. It's simple. It's striking. The coloring is amazing. The drawing is awesome. It's got a Mobius feel to it, actually, throughout the whole thing, which is really awesome, especially if you're into his art. The worldview or world building, I would give an A. It really does set up in the beginning the society of what's going on. You can see these robots here have died, and they're leftovers, and basically everyone lives inside of them. So it's a really cool concept. The art I would give a B, because even though his is a Mobius type feel to it, there is a lot of cartoon kind of elements to it. I'm not really into the cartoon. I like the old 90s image, like clean, serious. I mean, you can see my art in the back. That's what I prefer. This is not my style, but that's just my personal preference. So I would give this story a B+. It has really good potential being an awesome story. Them living in these large robots, kind of a dystopian type future. There's kind of a cliffhanger at the end where the main character is in a wheelchair, and he has this robot friend that I guess no one's supposed to know about. And so they go looking for, I guess I forget what they're looking for, supplies or something like that. And on the very last page, they're about to run into some bad guys. So kind of predictable in that way. So I would give it a solid B. It's a good book. Check it out for yourself. See if you like it. Wasn't my favorite, but had real potential that I really hoped would have been there. But number 13, Cutting Edge, number 1. And this is from Titan Comics. I give this a B+ rating. The world building here is an A-. You get a sense of who the characters are immediately. They introduce each character, give a bit of their backstory. There is a page, like a character page, that talks about who each of the main characters are and how they relate to the story. You can see that on the very front here. You really are drawn in with the story here. I would give the story a B because on the front end, it really reads like a movie, like an action movie. Like, it's really good in that way. Like, you're really drawn in at the beginning, but then the end turns really flat. And The reason why is because they're all commissioned to come together. The reason why it's called Cutting Edge is because all these characters here, they're on the cutting edge of humanity. They're the best artists, the best doctors, the best scientists. They've all been chosen to come together to go on this secret mission, all individually secret mission. Whoever wins, and basically, actually, I'd say that it's like a competition to see who's the last man standing. It's basically what it's about. And so you follow some of the characters on their particular mission. They're going to find this singer-songwriter who is in a lot of debt with the wrong people. So they're going to find him. They want to pay off his debt. And then at the very end, I'll give you a bit of a spoiler. The reason why this singer-songwriter is hidden is because he's trying to write the perfect song. And he wants to write the perfect song because when he does that, this siren is going to show up. And there's a picture of the siren right there. And that's just how it ends. And so I just kind of walked away like, what? Why do I care? Like, the siren didn't really show up at first. It's not one of those like endings where you're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. I want to see what happens. You're just kind of like, a siren. Like, okay, so where did this siren come from? Like, you're not really bought in. So for me, it's not one of those that I'm going to really go back to. I may check out later and just see how the siren really fits into the story, at what happens with the other characters as they're pursuing their mission. But overall, it wasn't one of those that it started out like this great action movie and then just kind of fell flat for me. So if it had been that action type movie throughout the whole thing with good story, I mean, the other thing too is it's a big comic book. There's tons of dialogue, lots to read, lots to be involved with, lots of character development. I just think they could have done so much more with it. So B+ for me on that one. Now I'm going to start getting into the A's. This is the top 12. We're going to start with some A- books and go from there. This is number 12, Sam and His Talking Gun, number 1. This is from Scout Comics. I really love this book. I was hoping to love it more, but I still would give it an A-. This is a book that I probably will check out further, and I would recommend it to you. The world building in it, give it an A. In the story, you will see kind of a background on who the characters are. It gives a flashback, so you kind of see where they're at today. I really did like that part of it. The art on this, I mean, look at the cover. The cover is striking, which I love that. And throughout the book, it's much like that. I mean, it's got a very, I don't know how to describe it. Lots of like block patterns and block colors, lots of action lines and beautiful contrast. I always say like a graphic design look because it does have that. It's not rendered a whole lot. It's more like flat coloring, flat shadowing, but put together in a way that really gives it a 3D effect. Good contrast of color. You can see the green and the red, the black and whites, bold, action, very well designed, very good art, A on the art. The story I would give a B, and the reason why is because it's a cool concept, but some of the storytelling, it's a bit confusing. So it's got great action, good action scenes. It just needs some editorial comments. And what I mean by that, it's just like a little block that says, now we're here, or this is who this character is, or that kind of thing, because it transitions to a flashback and the coloring changes. But then in the flashback, the coloring goes back to the original. And so you're lost 3/4 of the way through the book. In the second flashback, you're confused as to whether did you go back to the original or are we still in the flashback scene? That was really hard for me to tell what was going on. I had to go back and read it a couple times just to kind of see who the characters are, because it's got the same characters at 2 different times and they introduce a third character, and that part was really confusing. But I feel like this story has really good potential, and it's one of those that could turn into an A+ for me if the story becomes clear and easy to follow, because the art is so beautiful, and the concept of the talking gun. This gun right here, as you follow through, the gun talks to him, which is awesome. I love that. So I do recommend the story. I think it will turn a corner, and I think it'll be an amazing. So that's why I'm giving it an A-. It's got like really good potential. Number 11. Yasmin, number 6, and this is from Scout Comics as well. Scout Comics put out some really good books, and this is one of those. The world building on here is an A-. You really get a sense of the world. This is an Iraqi refugee living in America. You get a bit of her backstory. You get to see life from her perspective. So on that, it's really good. The art on this, I give it an A+. The rendering, the perspective, the proportion of the characters, the facial expressions, the character interaction, consistency between the character between panels is all really, really well done. The coloring's awesome. This is a beautiful comic. Give it an A+ on that. The storytelling, I would give an A. It's very easy to follow. You don't get confused between the flashback and the present day. The characters are very distinguished. There's no confusion there. Very easy to follow. It's a beautiful, simple story. The artwork is beautiful. The only question I have about this, which is why I would give it an A-, it seems to focus on the Iraqi girl's interaction with American culture and the perspective of those watching her. I just don't know if that's enough to carry it for a long period of time. There's got to be more going on. Now, I've got in on this on number 6. I had not read 1 through 5. There may be a lot more to her story of who she is and what she's doing, but it is the kind of book that I'm willing to go back and read and to see and to learn more about her and her story. So definitely recommend Yasmin, number 6. All right, now we're going into the top 10. My number 10 book is Autumnal, number 4 from Vault Comics. And I would give this a solid A. I would recommend this book. World building, art, and story are all top notch. World building, the good thing about this story is it really focuses on the backstory of this main character here. You get a sense of why the forest is haunted or possessed, or however you want to say it, which is really the theme here, the autumnal, which is awesome. I don't want to give too much of the story away. I will say, as you can see with the art, it's a bit more sketchy than I prefer, but they do it well, and that's why I gave it an A, because it matches the story. It really gives that kind of creepy, dark feel. Especially some of the like, look, if you look up close to that, like you see this person peering through the window. Awesome stuff. So the story is really easy, wonderful to follow. Here's an example of that sketchy type stuff, but it's kind of a murder scene, so it really fits it. So all in all, this is a really beautiful book. I can't tell you much about the ending, other than there is this interesting little cliffhanger with this leaf right there. That's all I'm going to say. Definitely check out the book, Autumnal, number 4. I've not read 1 through 3, but it is one that I want to go back and check out. Number 9, Stillwater. Number 5 from Image Comics. I give this one a solid A. The same thing here. World building, A. Art, fantastic, very clean. Colors are really well done. A bit muted, but awesome to the story. It fits the story well. This is one of those interesting stories where it's kind of like if you got a jigsaw puzzle and you had all the pieces together and you're starting to put the pieces, but you don't see what the other pieces are. But it's not one of those frustrating puzzles where you're like, I can't do this because there's not enough elements to the story. You want to finish the puzzle. And that's what's going on with this story. Now, I picked it up at number 5. I've not seen or read number 1 through 4, but I will say, just based on number 5, I could tell from the story that every issue is giving you a little bit more. And the basic premise is this Stillwater, this town, they're not allowed to leave it. They've all decided to stay. They don't want the rest of the world to find out what's going on in the town. I don't know exactly what's going on in the town, which is awesome. You do find out on the very last page, there is something very interesting with one group of people there that I'm not going to give away, but I would highly recommend that you check it out. In this one, I will say this, they do vote to go outside the city. And there's some other elements that are very interesting, like they decide one of the characters brings a dead body and is planning it outside the city, which gives away a little bit of what's going on here, especially with the characters at the very end. I don't want to say more than that, other than check this out if you want one of those stories that you can continue to follow and it continues to build. It's super interesting what's going on. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because I don't want you to know more than that. So. Number 8, Dark Interlude, and I'm gonna do 1 and 2 on this one because I originally had gotten 1, I think December, and then just picked up number 2. When I first read number 1, I was really disappointed because it was really difficult to follow. It's kind of a follow-up to an earlier series by Vault. But I went back and read, I did some research, I did some work. This is the kind of book that's hard to follow, but not because it's poorly written, but because it's really well written and it's challenging. And that's what I love about this book. The world building on this, I would give an A+, because they do a lot of, it starts out with this letter from Henry, who is the narrator of the story. He's also... I don't even know how to describe this because this world is so interesting. You're getting it from the perspective of the narrator, who is the author, who's also being convicted as a plagiarist, and who the characters themselves in the story are kind of in disagreement with. And so then you have these other, these characters are part of the story. So you have the hero, you have the muse, you have these kind of, basically taking the parts of a story and making them into characters that function together. It's really interesting take. One of my favorite parts of this story is this character right here with the cube. That's him on the cover. That's not the muse. That's the hero character. So yeah, there's a very interesting. It's almost like I think they call it like breaking the fourth wall. There's a lot of that. So I'm really a huge fan of this book. The art on here is great. It's very clean, simple. The color is done well. The contrast is done well. Perspective is done well. It's got looks like a bit of a watercolor flavor to it, but done really well, done in a really good way. Here's an interesting scene there. You can see all the main characters. So, highly recommend this book. I'm not going to say a whole lot about it. Good, really unique scenario, characters, interaction, all that kind of stuff. Number 7, this is Children of the Grave, number 1 from Scout Comics. I give this an A. World building is really awesome. This has kind of a Walking Dead feel to it. They're in this kind of confined area. They're not allowed to go out. You see the priest here is kind of in control. This character, this guy here, he wants to leave. He's got that youthful ambition, wants to see what's going on outside of this town. You kind of think maybe it's just being used as control, like fear is being used as control because you don't know what's going on outside the town. This character seems to think it's a bunch of lies, and you find out whether it's lies or not on the very last page. So I would definitely highly recommend this. The art is very well done. As you can see here, really good. Coloring, lots of good detail. Facial expressions are awesome. Good interaction between the characters. The story is very easy to follow. Really sets up that dystopian type feel, which I really love in a good story. So, highly recommend Children of the Grave, number 1. Number 6 book is The Red, Chapter 1 by Virus Comics. And I would give this an A. The world building on this, I would give an A+. And the reason why is because they do the kind of breaking the fourth barrier. They do ads in the book that have to do with the story. Like there's another one. If you see something, this is your very, I don't want to say typical, but this is your dystopian kind of got that Brave New World 1984 feel. The characters, basically they're not allowed to show emotion, so they take this medicine called Prex, which kind of subdues the emotion. All the artists and the creative people are, if they do anything that elicits emotion, they're basically redlined or whatever. They're put in jail or taken away. I mean, it's got that kind of 1984 feel with the monitoring. There's the special police force that kind of watches over what everyone's doing. There is a secret underground club where artists and musicians can hang out and express themselves without fear of being caught. It's amazing world building, amazing story. I would highly, highly recommend it. The only negative I came away with was I gave the art an A- because even though it's really got that good dark feel to it, it's a bit overcolored in spots. Some of the shading is a bit unnatural. It just has these weird highlights. So it's the coloring is not my favorite in here, but overall, really good book. Definitely one I'm going to be checking out. Especially if you love that sci-fi dystopian type book. All right, so I'm going to get into my top 5, and these are my A+ books. Number 5, Gung-Ho, Sexy Beast number 1, Ablaze Comics. The world building on here is very simple, straightforward. They're, once again, kind of a dystopian situation. These teenagers are in this confined space that they're not allowed to go out because of various dangers out in the world. The art on this is absolutely incredible. I gave it an A+ on the art. It doesn't really have, it's all kind of computer colored, digitally colored with not like, you don't see very clear, there's not clear pencil and ink. It's just all colored, but it has that kind of like Disney type feel to it, and it's done to that level. I mean, the art on here is fantastic. The story, I would give it an A. It's a dystopian, good story about a dangerous, excluded outside world, and these teenagers are inside of it. And the teenagers, it's not like Saved by the Bell. Like, the interactions are real. There's something that you would see in the real world. They're not fake characters. I don't normally go for like teenage type stories, but this is dystopian enough and well done enough that I would definitely check it out. And when the graphic novel hardcover comes out, I'm definitely getting that one with all the volumes collected in one. So. My number 4 book is Homesick Pilots. Now I've got number 1 and then number 2 came out this month. If you notice immediately, look at the covers. The art on this, especially that one, is fantastic. I definitely give this an A+. This is from Image Comics. Homesick Pilots is the name of the band that the main characters are part of, like a musical band. And the main character is this haunted house and this girl who's a member of the band. She, actually, you can see it there. There's the haunted house and the girl. I won't give too much away, all to say that everything is revolving around the story of this house. They're looking for a place to go play. They decide that maybe they'll check out this house and play there. There is a bit of kind of like this child funny kind of like interplay between these two bands, but in the midst of that, they go to this house. The house is possessed and one of the characters gets possessed. And there you go with the story. You're following all this like kind of creepiness after that. But I will say the art is an A+, very clean, very well done. Characters are very easily distinguished. Coloring is incredible, really fits the story. The story is easy to follow. Once again, you get these narrative pages that give you some good world building backstory to the whole scene. As I said, that character right there, he is super creepy. And you can see, once again, got a lot of that type stuff there. So I would highly recommend Homesick Pilots. When that hardcover comes out, definitely getting that for the story and the art. A+ on both those for Homesick Pilots. All right, number 3, NecroMorfus, number 1 from Behemoth Comics. It's a beautiful cover, but it's also a wraparound cover. And if you see the girl there in the middle, she is alive on one side and looks dead on the other. Now with this one, the world building here is great. You follow kind of the main character's backstory as he's talking to his therapist, which gives you kind of the bigger context of what's going on here. The art on here, it's black and white. But I'm going to give it an A plus because it's really, really well done. The shading is awesome. The tone is awesome. The characters you can follow, they're easily distinguished. It's got some great action pictures there. It does kind of have almost like a watercolor feel to it, which here I'm kind of eating my words on the whole watercolor thing. But the thing I love about this is the idea behind the story. I give this story an A plus. I may even give it an A plus plus because the main character, his whole kind of angle is if he touches a piece from a dead body, he becomes that person. And when he becomes that person, he feels the way they died, but then inhabits their world. It's an awesome, original idea, very well executed. My interest is, I want to know where this is going to go. This is an awesome story, well executed. My question is, will it continue that way? It's number one. I have really good hopes for it. It's my A+ book. I would definitely recommend it, and we'll see where this goes. My number one and number two, I would say, are tied for number one, but I'm going to do number two as crossover number two from Image Comics. This world building, A+, art, A+, story, A+, may even give it an A++. As you can see, the art there, very clean, lots of contrast, color is incredible, but the concept of this story is what sells it for me, and the covers, if you can see there. I don't want to give too much away of this, but the whole concept of the crossover is that the characters in the comic books are crossing over into real life. And you see the society's reaction to these characters. It brings up a lot of modern day issues that we're dealing with when it comes to racism and immigration, those kind of things, which you see in the story is very interesting. But the thing about this is who's helping them cross over. That is the amazing part of this story. The idea of this is so simple. It's one of those that you think, why have we not thought about this before as a story? And someone did, and I'm telling you, this is tied for my number one book because it is an incredible series. I would highly recommend it. When the hardcover comes out, I'm definitely getting it. So let me share with you my number one book. And here's the thing. My number two and my number one are tied, but for two different reasons. One was because of the strength of the story, and one because of the strength of the art. Art and story is excellent in both, but that's kind of where I'm going. So with the number one, it eats what feeds it. Number one, and I also got number three. I missed out on number two, but I'm definitely going to go back and get number two because this is an incredible book from Scout Comics. The world building in here, I would give an A. You're very much introduced into the characters. You understand what's going on in the bigger picture. You do want to learn more about who this woman is, which I'll talk about here in a minute. You do want to learn more about what's going on, which is why I need number two to kind of fill in some of the holes that I saw between 1 and 3. But for me, it's both the story and the artwork. The artwork on this is gorgeous. It's creepy. It's dark. It's got this like painterly type feel to it. It's like the other book. It's got a Disney-esque type look to it. Not really like drawn and inked, but more like digitally produced. Look at that. The coloring on it is incredible. I'm fascinated by this book, and I would highly recommend it. It's haunting and enjoyable. It's like if Disney decided to create a horror comic book, this is what it would be. So I'm very impressed with this book. Highly recommend it. You see one of the main characters here, this teenage boy. He's going to look for a job. This very kind of seductive woman hires him at this really creepy kind of residence. And then the story takes an amazing turn, and I would highly recommend that you get it. So that was a lot. Those are my 20 books from January. As I said, check them out. Tell me what you think yourself. I just want to thank, once again, the Dastardly Dingoes. I want to thank Comic Book Louisville. That's where I get all my comic books from. I would highly recommend that shop. They carry my book, The Silence. Go check that out. And anyways, there it is. That's all the books for January. I look forward to coming back in February, giving my reviews there. And I wish at this point I had some kind of like fancy byline like, hey, read indie comics or something like that. I don't have one yet. But all I'm going to say is just keep reading, keep checking it out. Indie world is fascinating. We've got a lot of good stuff out, and I look forward to coming back next month. Thanks, guys.